Amy pushed through the noisy crowd and passed by several outdoor diners. The aroma of grilled beef and roasted bell peppers mingled in the air. The outdoor diners were set up outside the storefronts. Groups of people sat on green plastic chairs. Above their heads, the yellowish lights were strung up, and the place was bustling with voices. This was the lively atmosphere of everyday life. It was the first time Amy had seen such a scene. Her heart seemed to be struck by something, and she quickly took out her sketchbook. While that feeling was still there, she started to draw with the paintbrush in her hand. Under the simple plastic shed were filled with laughter and joy, the smell of grilled food, and the relaxation after a long day of exhaustion. There was a strange light in Amy's eyes. She stood under the street tree outside the outdoor diner. Although she wasn't one of those people, she still felt the beauty of life. As Amy was drawing, she only felt a stabbing pain in her stomach. Amy didn't take this pain seriously. She just thought that her stomach, which was used to the food in the upper district, hadn't fully adapted to the new environment yet. However, the next second, she only felt a blackout in front of her eyes, and finally heard the voice of the person across from her. Someone fainted. When she woke up, everything in front of her was white. There was a nurse beside her pulling out the needle. When the nurse saw that she was awake, she said softly, "You're awake. What happened to me?" Amy also noticed that she was in a hospital room. There was a faint pain coming from her abdomen. Her gaze quickly found her sketchbook, on which there was a half-finished drawing. "Appendicitis. You're okay now. Just have a good rest," the nurse said. Amy was stunned for a moment. Her usually calm and composed face showed a look of embarrassment this time. "I don't have the money to pay the medical bills. Hospitals surely don't allow on credit. There was a very handsome man who paid your medical bills for you. Is he your boyfriend? He was really nervous when he brought you here," the nurse said. Amy was a bit surprised. A handsome man paid her medical bills, and a boyfriend. She fainted on the street. In such a situation, they would surely contact the emergency contact person. She forgot to change her emergency contact person, and it was Alex. Alex was Amy's ex-boyfriend and also a sort of half-brother. She was adopted by the Smith family when she was 11 years old. The Smith family was wealthy. Legally, an adopted child has the right to inherit. So she just changed her last name to Smith and didn't get added to the Smith family's household registration. When she was 16, she got together with Alex, and the Smith family didn't have any objections. They had a 10-year relationship, but they broke up some time ago, and she was also kicked out of the Smith family. Thinking of Alex, Amy gave a bitter smile. Life is really unpredictable. Are you in a good mood? When you heard the nurse say that someone paid your medical bills for you, you automatically thought it was Alex. You must be really disappointed. Someone pushed the door open and came in. The cold and sarcastic voice instantly reached Amy's ears. Amy looked up at the person coming in and gave a light laugh. "I'm actually giving a bitter smile. I'm mourning for my lost love." The person who came in was wearing a black coat. He had a narrow waist and long legs. Inside was a black suit. His deeply chiseled and handsome features should have given people a pleasant feeling, but at the moment, his peach blossom eyes were full of sarcasm, giving him a bit more of an aggressive look. Amy realized that she had misunderstood. It turned out that it was her enemy who paid the medical bills, so she smiled even more sincerely. Over the years in the Smith family, what she learned the most was etiquette. She said politely, "Thank you for paying my medical bills." Ryan sat down beside her and sneered. "Now that you know it's me, are you feeling sorry?" "Not really. I'm just curious," Amy said. Amy looked at the prickly man in front of her with a pair of cold eyes, stared at him with confusion, and her eyes were full of inquiry. "According to reason, I should be among the top 3 people you hate the most, right?" "Top 3. That was a modest statement. The handsome man in front of her was named Ryan. Back then, he lived in the same neighborhood as the Smith family. Before Amy came to the Smith family, this guy was a very influential little bully, and he used to bully the young Alex every day. At that time, Amy had just arrived at the Smith family. Although she was a little girl, she grew up in a chaotic street. The darkness she had seen was not something these rich young masters could compare to. With such a good opportunity to repay the Smith family's kindness, Amy naturally wouldn't miss it. Before long, the little bully was bullied by Amy so much that he lost 2 front teeth. Amy led Alex to a successful revolution and severely suppressed this little bully. From then on, Alex treated Amy very well. From then on, the battle between the two sides started and didn't stop until Ryan went abroad to study in his senior year of high school. 3 years ago, Ryan returned to the country and took over the Ryan family's company. The first thing he did was to suppress the Smith family, and at that time, she had already joined the company. So there was naturally a new round of conflicts between the two sides with old and new grudges every time there was a party in the social circle. Amy could see this person's eyes that looked like they were going to eat her. It was really interesting to say. People really can't get rid of their childhood shadows. Even though Ryan was a successful person, he pretended to be gentle, elegant, handsome, and magnanimous in front of outsiders. But as long as he was in front of Amy, he was definitely the same childish bully as before. And his provocation couldn't be hidden at all. It was precisely because of this that Amy was so surprised. She was surprised that the other party was actually willing to pay her medical bills, and didn't ask the doctor to perform a lobotomy on her. When Ryan heard Amy's question, his expression didn't change. He still had that mocking expression and said, "I just think you still have some use value. Amy spread her hands and said with a relaxed smile, "With my current reputation, what use value could I have? Let's make it clear first. It was too much of a loss to both perform and sleep with someone in the past. I've decided that from now on, I'll only perform and won't sleep with anyone. If it's for Mr. Ryan, I'm willing to sleep with you but won't perform." Her tone was extremely relaxed, as if going from a God's favored one to being despised by everyone hadn't had any impact on her at all. And she could even joke about this matter calmly. Ryan's gaze slid over her pale face. The sarcastic words he originally wanted to say were swallowed back. His hand unconsciously clenched into a fist. And he said expressionlessly, "I need you to help me deal with the Smith family." Amy actually had already guessed it. She looked at Ryan and explained, "When I said perform, I meant selling my paintings, with no other services included." Amy said as she took out her phone, "Let's add each other on WhatsApp. It'll be convenient for me to pay you back the money." Ryan didn't take out his phone. He looked at Amy, his tone faintly tinged with anger, and his eyes were like steel knives, staring straight at Amy. "Even though Alex treated you like this, you still want to protect him?" Amy laughed. "Mr. Ryan, you have a really unique perspective. Everyone outside is saying that I'm an ungrateful wretch who, with one move, caused the Smith family's stock price to plummet. How come in your view, it's the Smith family that's wronged me?" Ryan seemed to think of something and said sarcastically in a bad mood, "Don't read those words that praise you for no reason. Reading too much of them will lower your IQ. Look at how stupid you've become now. How could words that insulted her be considered words that praised her awesomeness?" Amy was amused by these words. She had always known that this guy didn't speak nicely, and he had always talked like this in the past. But this time, Amy actually felt a bit warm inside. She actually felt warm from Ryan's sarcasm. Sure enough, reading too many of those people's words had made her less intelligent. Amy opened the Microsoft Word app on her phone in the handwriting mode and wrote an IOU. How much was the medical bill? $360. $600. Let's just round it up to 1,000. $600 for the medical bill and $400 as a favor fee. After Amy finished writing the IOU, she handed her phone to Ryan. "I really do thank you for paying my medical bill this time. My time's so worthless," Amy said. "Legally speaking, this is an act of kindness. There's no contractual validity between us, so I don't need to be responsible for it." Ryan, who had never studied American law, had no idea that he had been tricked and was silent for 2 seconds. Amy picked up the bag beside her, looked at Ryan, and said, "Add me on WhatsApp. I'll send you this IOU." When she said this, she paused for a moment and said seriously, "Thank you for helping me this time. If you want something else, you can tell me." Amy looked at Ryan, and there was a bit more warmth in her eyes. She continued, "We grew up together since we were kids. Alex is my ex-boyfriend, and the Smith family has taken good care of me and raised me all these years. I can't help you deal with them." Ryan's gaze stayed on her face for a moment and then landed on her neck. He said, "In that case, why don't you give me this necklace of yours?" Amy was a bit puzzled. "I can't give you this. This was a token of love that Alex gave her when he confessed to her at the age of 16. The pampered young master secretly went to work part-time and earned the 000 with great difficulty. It was the most innocent feeling of a young man. So beautiful, Amy had been wearing this necklace ever since. Also, because of the pure and passionate feelings that Alex had for her during their youth. No matter what he did, Amy had never truly hated him. When Ryan heard the refusal, his eyes were like a lake surface that suddenly entered winter, freezing inch by inch. The back of his hand that was clenched into a fist turned white from excessive force. He glanced at Amy, didn't take Amy's phone, and turned around and left with his long legs. Amy looked at the other person's dashing departing back. The newly poor artist let out a sigh. It was 1,000 after all. And he just gave it up like that. Amy left the hospital and returned to her rented house. She lived in a guest house in the south of the city and lived together with the landlord's family. The landlord was a powerful businesswoman who owned several stores and was rarely at home on weekdays. The reason why Amy was able to rent this house for $600 a month was mainly because when Amy mentioned her occupation and said that she was an artist who stayed at home all the time, the landlord immediately decided to rent the house to her. The landlord had a mother in her 70s. Her face was full of wrinkles. Her eyes were cloudy, and when she smiled, tears would come out. Her ears were not good, and you had to shout very loudly for her to hear. She only had 2 teeth left and basically used her gums to chew when eating. Despite her old age and frailty, she was extremely strong-willed. She had driven away many nannies with her loud voice. Thinking that it was not worth paying someone to take care of her, she was very friendly to Amy's arrival because Amy was a tenant who would pay the rent. In this way, Amy was able to rent this big house at a low price. The only requirement was to help take care of this strong-willed old woman. After the old lady fell asleep, Amy would go out to gather inspiration. During the day, she would paint at home, and the old lady would sit beside her and watch her paint. Staring intently as if watching something very interesting, Amy dejectedly lay on the bed. And there was still the smell of disinfectant from the hospital on her body. Amy thought of Ryan and his words. She was actually very surprised. Back then, she ran away so quickly. On one hand, it was because of the Smith family, and on the other hand, it was because of Ryan. The grudges between the two of them were enough for Ryan to get rid of her many times. She still remembered that a long time ago, the arrogant and unruly young man had hatred in his eyes and gritted his teeth and said fiercely, "Amy, one day, I'll make you kneel in front of me and repent." After all these years, she still remembered those eyes. After all, such a childish person was really rare in her life. When they fought with others, they would just go straight at it, and there was no such thing as the part of saying harsh words. As for dealing with the Smith family, the Smith family took her in all those years ago. Over the years, she had enough to eat and wear, studied in the best schools, and enjoyed the best education. She had no choice. With so much public opinion pressure, the Smith family actually managed to hold their ground. Mr. Lee touched the face of the girl beside him and looked at Ryan beside him. Ryan didn't say a word and just drank glass after glass of wine as if it were water. Mr. Lee thought it was strange. "Old Ryan, you haven't been in the right state these days." Ryan glanced at him and said indifferently, "No, you say no. But before, when I asked such a question, you wouldn't even bother to answer. You just look at me like I was an idiot a couple of times. But now you actually answered me seriously. I remember you have a bad relationship with the Smith family. Although they managed to hold their ground, they actually suffered huge losses. The eldest son of the Smith family even married into another family for business reasons. Isn't that something to be happy about?" As he said this, Mr. Lee remembered something even more interesting and continued, "Speaking of which, it's a pity about the eldest son of the Smith family's childhood betrothed. I've met her a few times. She's really like a fiery rose. She's attracted a lot of people's hearts, but she's also burned a lot of people's hands. You know what? Many people fancied her before, but she was dead set on following the eldest son of the Smith family. Now the Smith family has cast her aside." Mr. Lee clicked his tongue twice. It was hard to tell whether he was sighing or gloating. He continued, "A lot of people in the social circle are making fun of her. I just don't know where she's gone. Some people say that she and the eldest son of the Smith family were in a relationship for 10 years. The eldest son of the Smith family said it was a marriage for business, but actually he's secretly keeping her as his mistress, turning the original partner into a mistress. The Smith family really didn't do this in a proper way. Mr. Lee seemed a bit regretful as he remembered the appearance of that fiery rose. It was hard to tell if Ryan had listened or not. His face remained expressionless, and his gaze quietly landed on the wine beside him. It was hard to say what he was feeling. It was no surprise at all that Amy was abandoned by the Smith family. Ryan had thought he would be happy. But when he saw that person close her eyes and fall down, with a vulnerable frown on her face, he rushed up as if possessed. He couldn't even remember how he had taken her to the hospital now. Ryan tilted his head back and finished the last glass of red wine. He said, "She's not Alex's mistress." Amy left the Smith family, got sick, and didn't have the money to go to the hospital, which showed that she was no longer relying on Alex. 3 days after Ryan said this, he saw Amy and Alex climbing the mountain side by side. Alex was carrying the sketchbook. The two of them were walking on the mountain path. Alex was wearing a black tracksuit, and Amy was wearing a red tracksuit. It was obvious that they were wearing matching couple outfits, as if one of them getting engaged had no impact on their relationship at all. After reaching the top of the mountain, Alex set up the sketchbook for Amy. Amy started to draw, and Alex stood beside her and watched her. In the background was a forest that stretched from the ground to the sky. A vast and neatly arranged expanse of green. Ryan stood on the stone steps and looked at them expressionlessly until Amy saw him. Amy even waved at him, looking like she had met an old friend. Alex stood beside her and seemed to be saying something to Amy. They were a handsome man and a beautiful woman, still as well matched as they had always been. Every time they appeared, they were in a world of their own. And it seemed that everyone else outside was just an outsider. The mountain breeze carried the fresh scent of grass and trees. Ryan retracted his gaze and left. Amy watched Ryan leave and thought, as expected, this person didn't care about the 1,000 debt. She had originally wanted to find an excuse to separate from Alex, but now she had to put that idea aside, thinking back to the old days. She was despicable, shameless, and scheming before she went to the Smith family. During those years on the streets, she had also managed to survive tenaciously with her own despicability, and now, she really couldn't bring herself to be tough anymore. It was completely different from what the outside world imagined. When Amy left the Smith family, there was indeed someone who was hysterical, but it wasn't her. From the very beginning, she hadn't made a scene with Alex, even though she had caught him in a compromising position with another woman in bed, but Amy didn't care. The Smith family had given her so much. Whether she was thrown out by the Smith family to take the blame or her relationship with Alex was completely broken, there was a moment when she felt like she had repaid all her debts. With a bit of numb relief, this didn't mean that the other person could keep disturbing her life again and again. They called it, "If we can't be lovers, we can be siblings," with a nice-sounding name. Amy felt disgusted. Today, the landlord accompanied the old lady to the hospital for a medical examination, so Amy just happened to have time to go out to gather inspiration. But not long after she went out, she met Alex. Alex pestered her and had a look of a loving big brother on his face. "Let me carry your sketchbook for you. I can do it myself." "Amy, you're my sister. Even if we've broken up, I can't treat you like an outsider." Amy felt very uncomfortable, but she still gave the sketchbook to him and said, "I don't treat you as an outsider." "Good." Alex carried the sketchbook and continued, "I used to carry your sketchbook for you all the time." Amy didn't say anything. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught sight of someone all the way to the top of the mountain. That person walked unhurriedly behind them, neither too far nor too close, and finally left silently. That person left in the end. The name of that person rolled around on her lips twice, but she finally swallowed it back. Ryan received a strange call at night. On the other end of the phone was a familiar voice. "It's me, Amy, the one who owes you 1,000. Are you free now?" The voice on the other end of the phone was mixed with the howling wind and the rustling sound of the leaves. She was still on the mountain. No. Ryan stood up and took a cigarette. A sense of restlessness welled up in his heart. Oh. Then forget it. It's so late. I'm sorry for bothering you. Her tone was a bit disappointed, just as Amy was about to hang up the phone. Ryan looked out the window. Outside was the black night sky. Under that night sky, there was a person standing alone, maybe still carrying a sketchbook. He lowered his eyes and slowly said, "Over all these years, isn't there anyone you can turn to for help?" The person on the other end of the line seemed to be stunned for a moment, and then she let out a soft laugh. That gentle voice reached Ryan's ears and instead left a tingling feeling in his heart. Yeah. I'm really a failure at life. There's no one I can ask for help. I'm still at the second pavilion on Rose Mountain. If you don't come, and I get eaten by a wild animal, then you won't get your 1,000 either. When Ryan arrived, the dense sycamore trees on Rose Mountain let out waves of cries under the attack of the strong wind. The night sky was high, and there were only a few pale stars. Under the faint starlight, Amy wasn't in the pavilion. She was sitting on the steps, holding up the sketchbook and drawing attentively. When she heard the sound, she looked up, under the starlight. She smiled at once, and her eyebrows and eyes relaxed. I thought you wouldn't come. If you thought I wouldn't come, why did you call me? This was said in a very angry tone. When Amy saw that he was really angry, she immediately raised her hands in surrender. I said the wrong thing. I called you because I was sure that you're a good person and wouldn't leave me alone. Ryan walked up to her and said angrily, let's go. I'm just here for that 1,000. Yes. Yes. That's 1,000. It can buy 2,000 loaves of bread. Amy put away the sketchbook and stood up. Only then did Ryan notice that she had sprained her foot. Her ankle was swollen up. Looking like a loaf of bread, Ryan glanced at her and saw that she was carrying the sketchbook and preparing to hop down on one foot. She actually dared to hop on one foot on these long mountain steps. So you called me here to watch you perform hopping on one foot? Ryan reached out and grabbed her arm. His tone unfriendly. Amy looked up and laughed. I was too embarrassed to directly ask you to carry me. So I was going to try to gain your sympathy with my performance. Ryan had a serious expression on his face. His voice was low, and he said angrily, where's the Alex you were so desperate to protect? Amy raised her eyes and looked at Ryan, and said plaintively, I've been abandoned. Not to mention that I sprained my foot. Even if I were eaten by a wild animal here, he wouldn't care about me anymore. Ryan knew clearly that she was just joking around. But he couldn't bear to leave her alone. He bent down and prepared to carry her on his back. Amy's slender legs wrapped around Ryan's waist, and she lay on Ryan's back with a soft laugh, saying, this is the first time someone has carried me. Ryan asked, hasn't your Alex ever carried you? When I was a kid, I stole a bun. The store manager of that store hung me up for a whole day to teach me a lesson. Ever since then, I get scared whenever my body is out of my control. Ryan knew that Amy was adopted by the Smith family, but he didn't know that she had been treated like this when she was a child. In Ryan's mind, Amy had always been as fierce as a little wild animal when she was a kid. He was silent for a moment and then asked, which store was it? Amy laughed. I was just kidding you. You actually believed it. That's too bad. I was going to send them a banner that says, eliminating the scourge for the people. For some reason, this sentence hit Amy's funny bone, and she laughed heartily, saying, I was really a troublemaker when I was a kid. The night wind was a bit chilly. Amy curled up on Ryan's back to shelter from the wind and said intermittently, I'm actually quite surprised that you came to help me. I wasn't very sensible when I was a kid. At that time, I had just gone from being a homeless person to having a home. And I was eager to prove that I was a useful person to the family. I didn't know my own strength and hurt you. I'm really sorry. The person who had been walking down the steps one by one paused for a moment and then said sarcastically, it's as if I was some kind-hearted person who let you bully me at that time. Ha ha ha. That's true. You were really a little bully back then who thought the whole world should revolve around you. Fortunately, I showed up in time. Otherwise, you would have been a childhood nightmare for so many people. Amy recalled the past and said, to be honest, it was quite fun fighting with you. Especially when I had you pinned down. Your face at that time. It was really fun to pinch. Likewise. Your face felt pretty good to pinch at that time too. As Amy was talking, Ryan felt a touch on his shoulder. She had fallen asleep. Amy's head rested on Ryan's sturdy shoulder, and the delicate skin on her cheek unconsciously slid across his side neck, bringing a tingling sensation above their heads. The night sky was still high and deep. It should have been the sound of the leaves rustling. But now, all he could hear was the faint and audible breath of the person on his back, hitting his skin, damp and warm, just like this. Ryan quietly carried her down the mountain. The tall and straight mountain peak was immersed in the night, silently watching them leave. When Amy woke up, It was already the next day. It was a strange room with a strange smell. The sunlight poured into the room through the window, and the air seemed to have a warm touch. Amy found that she was sleeping on the sofa, and her originally injured foot had been bandaged. There was a piece of paper pasted on the coffee table. Cook for yourself in the kitchen. If you starve to death, remember to write a suicide note. The bold and unrestrained handwriting really matched this person, but the content was a bit childish, like that of a primary school student. When Ryan came back, he saw Amy making instant noodles. When she saw him come back, she asked, "Do you want a pack?" Ryan was really speechless and said, "There's rice and vegetables in the kitchen." Amy smiled obsequiously and said, "I can't cook. Can you cook?" "Before I came to your place, I had been eating instant noodles for 4 days straight. They were all classic beef flavor. There wasn't even the spicy Mexican chicken flavor. So pitiful." This person always knew when to stir up trouble and when to show weakness. Ryan had a serious expression on his face and walked into the kitchen. His back was like that of someone going into battle. "Didn't you say you used to be on the streets?" Amy took it for granted and followed him, saying, "Have you ever seen a homeless person who has rice and vegetables and can cook?" Amy was actually quite surprised. Ryan could actually cook. Not only could he cook, but he did it quite skillfully. "You're good. I couldn't tell at all. You're actually a great house husband. I thought your place must be a single-family villa, and there would be a dozen people serving you. You would eat steaks shipped from abroad and drink red wine." The Smith family was like that. They had a big single-family villa, and there were a butler, nannies, a chef, and a gardener, adding up to 10 people in total. Ryan looked at her and said, "You like that kind of life?" Amy shook her head and said, "I still prefer to live on my own." As Amy spoke, she picked up the chopsticks and tasted the stir-fried dish that had just been served. She immediately gave a thumbs up and said, "It's delicious." Ryan glanced at her and still didn't give her a good look. "You wash the dishes later." Amy was completely won over by this delicious meal. "No problem, old Ryan. I couldn't tell. Behind that image of a domineering CEO, you're actually a domineering chef. I learned it when I was abroad alone." Amy said, "Amazing." The two of them then ate in silence. Amy didn't know why, but she felt especially relaxed these 2 days, especially when facing her former sworn enemy. She felt more relaxed than ever before. She didn't need to wear any masks, didn't need to please anyone. The other person already knew exactly what kind of person she was. She felt it was a pity, if it weren't for their opposing positions and the deep grudges they had accumulated in the past. They should have been able to become very good friends. After Amy had dinner and washed the dishes, she then said goodbye to Ryan, who was working in the study. "Ryan, I'm going back. Thank you for your hospitality." The study was very quiet, and there was no response. Just as Amy was about to say it again, Ryan's cold voice came from inside. "Get out." Amy didn't care about this and said, "By the way, the painting is finished. I'm giving it to you. Don't throw it away. When I become famous, this painting will be very valuable. You'd better give it to your Alex." "I don't want it." The person inside seemed to be suppressing his anger. "Okay then. I'll go give it to my Alex. Maybe he'll make up with me because he thinks my painting is good." Amy said this half seriously and half jokingly, and it was hard to tell if she was telling the truth. The person inside just spat out 2 words. "As you wish." Amy left just like that. The empty room seemed to lose its liveliness all of a sudden, after the door closed with a sound. The living room was eerily quiet. Suddenly, there was a bang sound. It seemed that something had been thrown onto the floor inside the study. When Ryan came out, the first thing he noticed was a painting placed at the door of the study. The painting depicted a young man. His eyes were full of unyielding spirit, as if nothing in the world could defeat him. The young man was so persistent and childish, defiantly looking at the world from inside the painting frame. There was a word inscribed beside it. Him. That was him in his youth. Amy thought that Ryan was nice to her, probably because he was interested in her connections in the Smith family's company. Amy felt a bit regretful, but she really didn't want to get involved in the mess of the Smith family anymore. Naturally, she wouldn't contact Ryan again. Sometimes, people can really let go of things. Besides the Smith family, Amy didn't have any relatives or friends. The landlord also decided to come back and accompany her mother. So Amy returned the rented house, carried her luggage on her back, turned off her phone, and started her creative journey. Amy had only been living like this for a few days when Ryan came to find her again. When Amy saw Ryan, she couldn't help but feel happy inside. She had a bit of a problem. Every time she was happy, she couldn't help but be sarcastic. Amy looked at him and said, "Did you give the painting to Alex for me?" What did he say? Sure enough, Ryan's face darkened, and the look in his eyes as he stared at Amy was full of anger. "You were going to give my portrait to Alex?" Amy let out a sigh and said seriously, "I was just carried away by love." The fire in Ryan's eyes burned brighter, and he sneered. "Then I'll congratulate you on getting your wish. Alex has been going crazy looking for you and is even talking about breaking off his engagement. Do you want to go back now and live happily ever after with him? I can give you a ride and even attend your wedding." Amy was very surprised. Alex, who was usually indecisive, could actually go this far. When Ryan saw her strange expression, he clenched his fists. Today, the words seemed to be squeezed out from his throat, gritted out through his teeth. "Are you really considering it? Is he that good? Does he make you lose your mind?" Amy met Ryan's eyes. There was a rare look of anxiety and pain in his eyes, and he seemed to be in a state of restlessness. Amy had almost never seen him like this in all these years. The smile that had been on Amy's face disappeared all of a sudden. She stopped teasing him and walked up to Ryan, wanting to ask him what was wrong. However, as soon as she got close, the next second she was hugged tightly. Ryan held her firmly and asked fiercely in her ear, "Amy, do you have a heart at all?" Amy looked up and met Ryan's eyes. The anxiety was no longer there. Amy felt as if she had been burned. The person who was never afraid of anything didn't dare to look him in the eye for the first time and looked away, saying dryly, "I have a heart. Of course I have a heart. Let's talk properly. Let's talk properly." Ryan didn't know what to do. This person didn't seem to care about anything. She talked about Alex all day long, but Ryan could feel that as long as she was willing, anyone would go crazy for her. Yet she seemed to care about no one. Ryan's heart was like an iceberg. And now something that had been buried for a long time was exposed naked after the iceberg melted, forcing him to face it. His heart didn't want to suffer like this anymore. "Amy, sometimes I really want to take out your heart and see if Alex has put some kind of spell on it." At this point, it would be strange if Amy didn't understand. She was very surprised. You, I know that love can't be forced. If you want to get back together, that's fine. Just don't let me see you two again. The Smith family can't stand me causing trouble for them now." Ryan said these words viciously, but he still held her tightly and had no intention of letting go at all. There was a faint smell of paint on Amy, which made it impossible to let her go. Amy was as stiff as a cat that had been forcibly hugged. She struggled a bit but couldn't break free, so she mumbled, Why are your words and actions inconsistent? If you don't let me go, how can I go back and get back together with Alex?" Amy felt that whenever she faced Ryan, she was like she was sick and had to provoke him to get angry. Sure enough, the fire in Ryan's eyes almost became tangible, and his voice was full of danger, as if it was squeezed out from his throat. Amy responded with an stood on tiptoe, and kissed Ryan's tightly pursed lips several times like a chick pecking at rice. "I was just teasing you this time." Ryan was left stunned. Amy took the opportunity to quickly wriggle out of his arms and stuffed the sketchbook into Ryan's arms. "Let's go, Mr. Ryan. Today you're out of the single dog club. On such an important day, you should cook something delicious, right?" Ryan held the sketchbook and saw Amy walking beside him. Her whole face was red, and her eyes were shining with a watery light. He had seen her being fierce, seen her angry, seen her smiling and trying to please, but he had never seen Amy like this before. Amy was actually just acting on impulse. Now she was also feeling shy. She looked at the sky and the ground, but just didn't look at Ryan. The setting sun in the distance shone warmly, and the street and everything around it seemed to be covered with a layer of warm color. Amy had a big dinner in the evening and was so full that she lay on the sofa without moving. When Ryan saw her like this, he was both angry and amused. He reached out to rub her belly. Amy, being a bit of a drama queen, widened her eyes. Is this too soon?" Ryan's face turned to black and pulled her into his arms. "I'm just rubbing your belly. What are you thinking?" Amy was held like a rag doll and was extremely uncomfortable. She tried to struggle a bit. "I also want to rub my belly." What are you thinking? These words were quite sharp. But Ryan saw that her ears and neck were all red. His heart felt as if it had been gently tickled by something soft. Both itchy and numb, Amy calmed down and lay on Ryan's sturdy chest. Listening to the rhythmic sound of his heartbeat, Amy fell asleep. Just like last time when she could quickly fall asleep lying on Ryan's back, Ryan just looked at this person. And the more he looked, the more dissatisfied he felt in his heart. Slowly, he lowered his head and carefully kissed the hair of the person in his arms from a very long time ago. His heart had been completely occupied by this heartless person, but her gaze had never landed on him when he was young. He could only bully Alex again and again to get her to stop and notice him. He had met Alex this afternoon. The person who had once had everything always stood beside the person he loved, looking so proud and reminding Ryan that he could never have this person. And now, at a party, Alex was so drunk that he lost consciousness, and the only name he kept shouting was the same, Amy. Amy, as if she was the person he loved the most deeply. The scene was extremely awkward, but everyone present was very shrewd. Even in such an awkward situation, the group of people didn't let the conversation die down. Instead, they all praised Alex's deep affection and said that with Amy and him having such a long relationship, she would surely come back to him. It was as if the name Amy would always be linked to Alex's name. At that moment, Ryan didn't want to be an outsider anymore. Ryan stroked the soft hair in his arms. He wanted to have this person and also wanted to be owned by this person from his restless youth to this very moment. The next second, Ryan saw the necklace around Amy's neck and thought of what had happened more than 10 years ago. That year, Amy was 16 and he was 18. He had already realized his feelings for her. At that time, he knew that Amy lacked a sense of security and was afraid of poverty and hunger. He wanted to prove that without his family's support, he could still give her a life of plenty. At the age of 18, he spent 3 months barely earning $3,000 and bought a necklace. He wrote her a love letter and asked her to meet him that day. He waited for 4 hours, but she didn't come. When he went back, Amy was on Alex's arm, and the two of them were being congratulated by everyone. The ridiculous thing was that Alex gave Amy an identical necklace, and that necklace had the same origin as his. He just stood not far away and watched as all that excitement passed him by. Ryan and Amy were together. This news was even more shocking than when Alex and Amy broke up and Amy was kicked out of the Smith family. Over all these years, whenever the names Amy and Ryan were put together, the key words were always confrontation, sharp tongues, and a tense atmosphere. However, they were now together. Some people had seen with their own eyes that Ryan personally drove to pick up Amy. After picking her up, Ryan carried the sketchbook while Amy held his hand. Their intimate state clearly showed that they were a couple. Brother Ryan, are you really together? Mr. Lee was very embarrassed. After all, the last time he had gossiped about Amy in front of Ryan, saying that Amy must have become Alex's mistress and that the original partner had become the mistress and so on. Who would have thought that in less than a month, not only did Amy not become a mistress, but she also successfully won over her former sworn enemy Damar. Lee swallowed. He was Ryan's subordinate and had followed Ryan since they were young. He knew that in the past, these two people would fight like mortal enemies whenever they met. There was no hint of any affection between them at all. He still remembered that when Amy first met Brother Ryan, she tricked Brother Ryan so that he lost 2 front teeth. During his tooth-changing period, Brother Ryan didn't say a word for 2 months. He just stared fixedly at Amy and then fought with Alex. And as a result, Alex also lost some teeth. Later, when Brother Ryan went abroad, the conflict between the two sides ceased. After Brother Ryan returned to the country, he had become a sophisticated man in a suit. Everyone in the industry praised Ryan for his gentlemanly demeanor and the air of a noble young master. Amy had also grown into a fiery rose, and every move, every frown, and every smile of hers was so beautiful that it left everyone in awe. However, whenever these two people met, it was like a magic mirror that revealed their true feelings. Damar. Lee didn't quite believe it in his heart. Brother Ryan, are you and Amy, sister-in-law, really together? Ryan had had a bit to drink. Could this be fake? Mr. Lee said cautiously. I'm just afraid that she'll deceive you again. After all, look at the state of the Smith family now. I'm worried that she'll play the same old tricks. Have you forgotten how she's been deceiving you for Alex since you were kids? Mr. Lee got angry when he talked about this. I remember it clearly. That time. It was clearly Alex who provoked us first. But then Amy fought with you until you were both covered in blood. Ryan's eyes darkened. And he didn't say anything. He didn't even know what to say, after Ryan went back. He waited for a long time but didn't wait for Amy to come back. Amy had said that even if they were together, they shouldn't interfere with each other's lives. Ryan thought that she had been exploited too much by the Smith family before. He felt sorry for her. So he naturally agreed, now that she still hadn't come back. Ryan looked at his phone but still didn't make a call, however. After a while, he still went out. The places where Amy had been gathering inspiration these recent days were fixed. Ryan drove the car himself and slowly drove on the road. The car passed by the sounds of people drinking and playing finger-guessing games at the outdoor diners. Finally, at the traffic light at the intersection, he found the familiar figure. Amy was carrying a sketchbook. And the person standing next to her was Alex. Ryan sat in the car and looked at the people over there, watching those two people chatting and laughing, watching them look at each other. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but he could feel that they were out of place with the surroundings. They were the ones who belonged in the same world that it had always been like this. There was no anger, just waves of weariness washing over him. No matter how hard he tried, as soon as Alex called her, she would turn back. Ryan took out his phone and sent a message. Ryan saw the person over there take out their phone, look at the message, and then start typing. Ryan quickly received a reply from the other side. Where are you, Amy? I'm almost back. Can I have some American-style barbecue ribs for dinner tonight? Ryan was so angry that he actually laughed. He replied furiously, let's break up. Amy's reply came even faster this time. Be good. Not being able to make American-style barbecue ribs isn't a big deal. I don't dislike you for that. Let's have Texas brisket hot pot for dinner tonight. Ryan, break up. You can't make Texas brisket hot pot either. This is getting serious. We can think carefully about the breakup. Ryan was really furious this time. Another message from Amy came. I was just teasing you. Are you tired from cooking? I'll bring 2 packs of instant noodles later. Let's have instant noodles for dinner tonight. Do you want the American barbecue flavor or the classic beef flavor? You can eat with your ex-boyfriend. I don't want to be the third wheel. Then get out of the car quickly. Let's eat together. The 3 of us. Amy's message came quickly. Ryan looked up and saw Amy waving at him. She was smiling brightly, as beautiful as a magnolia flower blooming freely in spring. Everyone around was drawn to her. Ryan got out of the car and walked towards the 2 of them. Amy naturally threw the sketchbook to him. I'm so tired today. At this moment, Ryan noticed the look cast by Alex beside him, filled with resentment and jealousy. All sorts of emotions. Alex quickly concealed his emotions and said with a smile, Mr. Ryan, long time no see. Ryan just nodded and remained coldly silent. Among the 3 of them, Amy was the most composed. She said, okay, Mr. Alex, you've seen your brother-in-law. Let me introduce him again. This is my boyfriend, Ryan. Ryan saw that Alex's surface pretense completely cracked, and madness appeared in his eyes. Amy, don't be like this. I know you're taking revenge on me. I know I shouldn't have had a relationship with Melissa. Amy still had that expression, as if she couldn't understand at all why Alex was in so much pain. She said sincerely, no, don't get me wrong. I'm not blaming you. And I didn't think about taking revenge on you too. The Smith family gave me everything, and I'm really glad that I can pay them back. Before, Ryan always felt that he didn't care about anything and just muddled along. Amy, who could even discuss dinner with him when he brought up breaking up, really gave him a headache. But now, he found that when this kind of situation happened to someone else, it was actually quite satisfying. Ryan understood that Alex hoped Amy would take revenge on him and hate him, because revenge and hate both represented betrayal and love, but Amy had neither. Even though Alex was with someone else and even though Alex betrayed her for the family, her first reaction was still the kindness the Smith family had shown her. There was no revenge and no hate what Ryan could think of. Alex could naturally think of too. In an instant, his face turned very ugly, and he said through gritted teeth, Amy, you have no heart. Amy looked at Alex running away in a huff in bewilderment. She turned back to Ryan and said, so strange. I've been so good to him, and he actually shouted at me and said I have no heart. Is Alex under too much pressure recently? Ryan suppressed the ecstasy in his heart and put on a puzzled look. What's wrong? Look. I've protected him since we were kids. When we grew up, I gave up my favorite major and studied business with him. Occasionally, when he hooked up with other girls, I even covered for him and helped create the image of a perfect boyfriend for him. Later, when he was going to get engaged to someone else, I took on such a big matter and then stepped back. Now that I've found someone I like, I still remember to return the token of love he gave me to him. I've been more than kind to him, and I can even be called deeply affectionate. How could he say I have no heart? How could he say that? It's too much. The more I think about it, the angrier I get. Ryan had never known that Alex had hooked up with other girls before, nor did he know that Amy had covered for him. However, someone who had truly loved someone knew what it was like to love someone. He lowered his head and looked at Amy. He thought that she looked more dazzling than the sunlight at this moment. He deliberately asked, Amy, if I hook up with other girls? Before Ryan could finish his sentence, he heard Amy looking at him with a dangerous glint in her eyes. I'll give you a chance to rephrase that question. You must think carefully, because your family didn't adopt and raise me. You know. Ryan's eyes were as calm as water, looking at Amy, no matter how he looked at her. He felt that she filled the most missing part in his heart. Amy said in a dangerous tone, if you dare to cheat on me, I'll dare to cut off your third leg. In this busy street filled with cars and people, in this bustling downtown area, he just looked at Amy's constantly opening and closing lips. This was the most beautiful words he had ever heard, and he wanted to kiss her after venting her anger. Amy saw Ryan's gaze and noticed what he was looking at. Her face blushed. She stood on tiptoe and quickly kissed Ryan. Okay. I definitely don't mean to be double standard with you and Alex, Amy said in a way that seemed to be for his own good. I'm so excellent. No matter how fragrant the wildflowers outside are, they're not as fragrant as me. See, Alex must be regretting it now. Ryan smiled. He understood Amy. He knew that she lacked a sense of security and that she always said her true feelings through some joking words. Her possessiveness towards him was all real. Ryan hadn't been this happy for a long time. He even felt a bit of sympathy for Alex. Amy, who was walking ahead, suddenly turned around. By the way, are you really not able to make grilled chicken and baked potatoes? Ryan looked at Amy. Don't tell me you're with me just because I can cook. Amy nodded. Of course that's the reason. Otherwise, would it mean I'm just lusting after your body? As Amy spoke, she wrapped her arms around Ryan's waist. I'm not lusting after your abs, nor your handsome face. I'm not such a shallow person. Amy really loved teasing this person. When she was young, she liked to bully him and see that kind of arrogant I'm the best in the world expression. Later, she liked to see the look on his face when he was really angry but couldn't do anything to her, and now, she was keen on making this person show more expressions. Not far away, Alex looked at the backs of the two people walking away. In his hand was the token of love he had given Amy back then. The cold touch of the necklace reminded him of many things. In high school, Ryan and Amy somehow reconciled. He was already uncomfortable at that time. And what he didn't expect even more was that Ryan was actually going to confess to Amy on her birthday. Alex did something that he couldn't tell whether it was right or wrong in his whole life. On a whim, he copied Ryan's way of confessing. Amy really got together with him. At that time, he thought that he would be good to this person for the rest of his life, and now, he looked at the two people walking away. The atmosphere between them was something he had never had, not even in their youth. Every time Amy and Ryan fought and bickered, it was so vivid and real. Completely different from how she was in front of him. Alex suddenly realized that he had never really had this person. In an instant, he lost all his strength.